What's happening, fight fans all around the world? You're watching What You Need. And today we're going to talk about something that BlueBlood Sports TV commented on. And I think a lot of people assume a lot about, you know, certain things in boxing. And I just want to talk to you guys about that particular thing that Blue Blood was speaking about. That I think a lot of people get the wrong perception about Mexican fighters. A lot of people think Mexican fighters are not slick. Uh, that a lot of them are not slick. That they don't have slickness in them. That they're more like a toe-to-toe fighters. They take a punch to deliver one. They're very macho. They're very, I'm gonna fight you to the very end, blood, sweat, and tears. I'm not gonna give up. That kind of thing. And that perception of Mexican fighters, I remember Canelo Alvarez actually addressing that. That people think that Mexican, to fight like a Mexican or Mexican fighting is toe to toe, kind of like Gennady, Golovkin say Mexican style. And Canelo, I remember when he had to face Gennady Golovkin the first time, he was saying the Mexican style, various versions of Mexican style. They're very much, the Mexican style it has a rich lore in it, and it's not just toe to toe fighting. There's defense in it, and there's slickness in it even. So, Blue Blood Sports TV, I agree with him on everything he was saying in his video concerning Canelo Alvarez, saying that, he learned a lot from Floyd Mayweather. There's certain things that I disagree with him with, and one of them is, saying that Canelo has a slick style and that, most Mexican fighters don't have a slick style, or a lot of Mexican fighters don't have a slick style. Or Mexican fighters, actually, he said Mexican fighters are not known for being slick and having a slick style. I think that's what he said, which, it's not 100% incorrect or inaccurate, but I think a lot of people, they overlook the fact that Mexican fighters, a lot of Mexican fighters actually, a significant portion of Mexican fighters have a slick style. And I want to go through some of it, and you guys can also jump in if you want to jump in here as a guest on this stream. You can do so, and you can even mention some Mexican fighters that who are slick, because there's a lot of them actually that are slick. And this particular one is addressing what Blue Blood Sports TV been saying about Mexican fighters not being known for being slick, being known more for their action than being slick. And truth be told, um, there are a lot of Mexican fighters who are slick fighters. And I want to talk about, the first one I want to talk about is Miguel Canto. So Miguel Canto was a flyweight, WBC flyweight champion. And he had, I believe he had 14 successful defenses of the WBC title at flyweight. And he was a very slick Mexican boxer. You couldn't touch him. You couldn't touch him. It was hard to touch him because, he would slip, roll, dip. He would block punches, and he would bump. He would use the ropes and bounce off the ropes, and he would snap back from punches and all kinds of things he would do. Right? It was very difficult to face. It was very difficult to fight. And yeah, he had some good power too. He didn't really get a whole lot of stoppages, but he was known for being slick. That was his thing. For those of you who don't know who Miguel Canto is, go check him out. Actually, the picture that I have right now, the profile picture for this stream, if you guys go back and look at the profile, that's Miguel Canto. He's alive right now. He's still alive. And you guys, if you want me to do an interview with him, try and hunt him down and find him online, and we do an interview with him in the stream, that would be great, because he would recap all the memories and stuff about it. Like I said before, there are a lot of great boxers. And Miguel Canto was a great Mexican boxer. He was a great boxer, period. Doesn't have nothing to do with Mexico. And a lot of people don't know who he is, or a lot of people don't. He fought somewhere between the 60s and the 80s, right? He was a tremendous boxer. Okay. So Canelo actually comes from a rich boxing heritage when it comes to Mexico. Mexico is like, they've been always there. The great countries up with the rich lore of boxing have been Mexico. They've been Argentina. course, the United States of America, the UK, you got the Philippines, you got Puerto Rico. So, I mean, when you're talking tremendous boxing heritage and tremendous boxing, you're talking about them countries. You also had, of course, you had Panama that's in there. You got the Colombians and the Venezuelans who just carry most Colombians and Venezuelans carry a lot of power. And then you have, countries like Ghana, Nigeria, been known for that. The other country, I can't remember its name right now in Africa, which is, known for that. You know what I mean? When it comes to me, I'll tell you guys. And they got a rich lore, rich history in boxing. So a lot of people stereotype like, Latin American fighters, oh, they fight to the finish, they fight to the death, they to and fro, they trade punches, they're tough guys. This is the thing that, is known by Mexican boxers and even Latin American boxers. But if you think about it, they're different kinds. Puerto Ricans, they know their boxing, man. They slick. When you look at Puerto Rican boxing, they got their defense in order. They're slick. They got a heart, but at the same time, they got punching power. A lot of them can punch. You look at Puerto and their styles vary so much in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rican boxers, I think, have the most varied amount of styles of boxing you'll ever find on the planet. But they know their boxing. You know what I mean? Mexican boxers also have a lot of varied styles, and I'll go through some of them. So Miguel Canto, anyway, defensive boxer, slick, not really a guy known for his knockouts, but he could, if he need to get you out of there, he'd get you out of there. You know what I mean? Let me give you another one. El Finito Lopez, the end, the beginning and the end. El Finito, known as the finale. That's it, the end. He used to put guys to sleep. He had a high knockout ratio, but he was also slick. You hardly touched him. Technically sound boxer. And this dude had 26 championship fights in which he was never defeated once. He had one draw in those 26 championship fights. He basically fought everybody of his time and era. So all the top minimum weights, he was a minimum weight. And Canto was a flyweight. All of the top minimum weights, all the top straw weights, minimum weight, whatever, he beat them. Okay. And some of them he had to go up to light, junior lightweight, also known as super minimum weight. They don't say super, or super straw weight. They don't really say that. They say junior lightweight or lightweight. He went up and he faced some of those guys that he didn't get to face down in minimum weight. He cleaned up shop. I mean, this dude had every single belt. He had the WBC, WBA, IBF. There was only 3 belts at the time. He also had the WBO at a certain point in time as well. So he had all the belts. He never was undisputed, but he had gotten all the belts at some point in time. And tremendous fighter, man. Tremendous fighter. But he was slick. And Nacho Beristain, he was the guy that actually trained him. And as you know, Nacho Beristain also trained the 2 Marquez brothers and a series of other fighters. And Beristain knew the fundamentals really down pat. But El Finito, man, he was perfection. Like, how Floyd is perfection, and Floyd loves El Finito as well, right? He's a fan of El Finito. The first time I ever heard about El Finito was actually through Floyd mentioning him. And Ricardo Lopez was like, it was the mark of perfection. He was very accurate with his punches, and on top of that, his defense was just crazy. So you would be missing, and he would set up shots. You miss him, and he counter you, knock you the hell out. He was a bad boy. In fact, he was on the, small fighters like that never really made the pound for pound list. This guy was so exceptional. He became pound for pound number 4 in the world at a certain point in time. Highly respected boxer. And guess what? El Finito Lopez, he's still alive today as well. If you guys want me to try and get an interview with El Finito, hey, I'm gonna try and do it. I'm trying my damnedest to get him, because Ricardo Lopez, he works with corporate people right now. He's got also he commentates for certain telecasts on boxing. But if I can get my hands on him, and if he speaks English, which he does, I'm gonna try and get my hands on him because I would like to interview these guys. These are extraordinary greats. People don't give him, they don't give El Finito the credit he deserves. He beat everybody of his era. Everybody. Yeah, okay. There was one or two of them that was, all of them were great. Don't get me wrong. And let me tell you how great they were. They would go on, even after he beat them, they would become world champions again in other weight classes. And some of them in more weight classes than he was champion. So let me just let it know, El Finito ain't no joke. That people don't really talk about these fighters because they was undefeated and people feel like about it that they didn't suffer a loss or whatever. But El Finito was, Floyd used to watch El Finito. Okay, if you want to see how to execute perfectly a leaping left hook, hold on a second. I'm being interrupted again by a phone call. Why, man? What's up with you people? What is up with you people? Why are you calling me, man? This is just terrible. I'm gonna have to write this up. El Finito Lopez. I don't know why somebody be calling me at this hour of the day. Nobody calls me at this hour. This is just gonna totally disturb the stream, but you gotta excuse it. They're gonna probably try and call again. Hold on a second. I'm gonna have to write out through this. I really wish I could mute it. Sometimes somebody comes to visit me. That's what happens. But I want to go through some more, man. So El Finito Lopez, then we got Hector Lopez. For those of you who don't know who Hector Lopez is, he fought in the 90s. Okay. And, I think his career ended in 2000. Now, Hector Lopez, man, was a very gifted fighter. He was gifted, he was talented, and he was also very skilled. And on top of that, Hector Lopez was a guy who, he used to use drug abuse and he used to get himself in all kinds of crime and all kinds of problems outside of the ring. He had a lot of problems outside of the ring. This guy should have been world champion multiple times. At lightweight and super lightweight, you know what I'm saying? Hector Lopez faced guys like Costa Zoo. He didn't get certain decisions. Like he should have gotten decision. He should have been lightweight champion. He should have beaten what's the guy name? I forgot the guy's name, but yeah, he should have beaten that dude. He got split decision loss to him. Hector Lopez could do it all, man. He could box, he could bang. He was elusive when he wanted to be. This guy had skills, man. This guy had talent. He was gifted as well. And he ran his body down. It's kind of like Paul Spatafora's story. Lost a couple fights he should not have lost. He should have really gotten the decision, but he wasn't the A side. One of his final fights was against Randall Bailey, in which he was hanging in there. He was competitive, and he was really old, and the only knockout loss of his career. Now, by the way, let me just mention, Ricardo Lopez never got knocked out. All right, that's to show you the defense the guy had. And Ricardo Lopez, in the end of his career, he's old and everything, but hadn't been in the boxing ring for 2 years. Stepped into the ring, faced Randall Bailey, or it was a year, I think it was a year and something, whatever it was. He's old as hell. And this dude, he had a hell of a chin too. He took some shots. But he knew what to do the next round, and he ran out of gas. He was just like really tired, tripped over himself. And as he got up, the next punch, Randall Bailey knocked him down, and the referee just stopped the fight. Now, he hadn't been dropped in the fight, and he got dropped there. Hector Lopez, I don't think he ever got dropped in his entire career. That's another thing. So, his defense was just crazy. He was slick. He was skilled. He could take a punch. And, this is a guy that should have been world champion. He never was, but he's a legendary fighter. And you guys should really check him out. Just watch how he fights. He has a son right now fighting, Adam Lopez. And Adam, he's lost a couple fights too and stuff. Even been stopped and stuff. I think he faced Oscar Valdez and dropped Oscar Valdez. All right. And he wasn't even when he fought Oscar Valdez, he wasn't even in the weight class. He moved up in the weight class to face that dude and gave him all kinds of problems, and there was last minute notice. He wasn't conditioned to deal with a bigger guy like that, and he took it on. You know, he's been. I believe that Adam Lopez at some point is going to become world champion if he sticks with it. You know, keeps on fighting, keeps on boxing. He's going to become world champion soon. He's had some tough opponents, some really, really good opponents he's faced. So he's got a great starting block. And when he starts becoming a world champion, he starts beating people. There's no turning back with him. And he's another slick boxer. Buddy McGirt actually is his trainer, right? And of course, when we're talking about slick Mexican fighters, Sergio Mora. Sergio Mora is a slick Mexican fighter. Just watch how he put his clinic on Shane Mosley. How he made Shane Mosley look, you know, slick a fighter. Not great knockout power. Again, he's not a knockout artist or anything, but he's slick. And Sergio Mora beat guys like Burnham Forrest. He should have beaten Shane Mosley, but they gave Mosley a draw. And he was a super welterweight. Okay. Shout out to Big Brother in Life. What's up, bro? What's up, Big Brother in Life? I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good, but I'm just talking about some slick Mexican fighters that a lot of people don't realize that there's a significant amount of Mexican fighters who've been slick, and I just want to bring them to the table so you guys can realize that Mexican fighters are not all rock'em sock'em robots. They're not all Antonio Margaritos. They're not all Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales. You know what I'm saying? And Marco Antonio Barrera was technically sound. All right. Eric Morales was a little bit more Kabbalah with his defense, but Morales could box, right? But you wouldn't think of Morales as slick. You wouldn't think of Marco Antonio Barrera as slick. You know what I mean? But they were good, solid, technical boxers. Juan Manuel Marquez, you wouldn't think of Marquez as slick per se, even though he blocked a lot of shots, uses defense and everything. You don't think of him as slick. You might think of Oscar De La Hoya a little bit as slick, because Oscar, how he outboxed Tito Trinidad, did his thing. He was a slick fighter. Big Brother, man, in life, you can hop on our stream, man. Hop on the stream. Let's chop it up. If you know any other slick Mexican fighters, let's talk about it, man. Of course, you may bring up Salvador Sanchez, a very slick Mexican fighter as well. Hard to hit, Salvador Sanchez. We're gonna talk about him. Salvador Sanchez actually had do I even have him here? Well, of course, he was undefeated at as a featherweight, right? He was an undefeated featherweight fighter, had so many different featherweight fights. Was undefeated as a featherweight fighter. He lost the fights in his career, but as a champion, he was undefeated, slick, skilled, uses range. Very, very good all-around fighter. I want to talk to you guys about a couple others, man. There's a bunch of them, actually, I have here that I wrote down. So you had Sergio Mora, who was slick. You also had Fernando Montiel. He lost to Mark Too Sharp Johnson. Right, Mark Too Sharp Johnson was by split decision, I believe, or majority decision. I can't remember, but he was a slick Mexican fighter. Won back his title and kept on going. If I'm not mistaken, Fernando Montiel was flyweight champion, super flyweight champion, and bantamweight champion. So he was a champion in 3 divisions. He moved through 3 divisions, became champion, moved up to featherweight as well, and fought I'm trying to remember the guy, Lee Selby, for his featherweight championship, and he hung in there with him. By the way, Fernando Montiel, again, another fighter who I believe he was stopped later on in his career or early in his career. I think very early in his career, very late in his career, he was stopped. But other than that, this dude never been stopped inside of his career while he's fighting. So again, I'm just showing you one of the things you can look at when you look at guys who slick or have defense is you look to see when they being stopped. If they being stopped, very, very early in their career, maybe the first fight, somebody knocked them out, whatever. And then very, very late in their career, they passed way past their prime and everything. And they may even be shot fighters at that point in time because they abuse their bodies, use drugs, whatever. You will see them get stopped then. But if you don't see them get stopped otherwise, you realize that they have, if they ain't getting stopped, that means they got defense, right? Because they may be losing fights or whatever, but they making it through the end of the fight. And it's not that they tough, it's that they have defense, right? And so that tells you how slick these fighters are. So you look at you look at Jojo Diaz. Jojo Diaz never been. I don't even think Jojo Diaz ever been dropped in his career. Jojo Diaz is another slick fighter. Now he can fight on the inside as well, and I think a lot of people mistake an infighter for being not slick. An infighter, you can have infighters like Roberto Duran was slick on the inside. You had you have a bunch of them actually that were pretty slick on the inside. Um, Jojo D is another fighter. He fight on the inside, and you can't touch him like that. You don't touch him like that. And he could fight also by boxing you on the outside. He could do various things. He had various amounts of slickness to him. You know what I mean? And so Jojo Diaz is a modern fighter today that you know about, and he's slick. If you haven't noticed, he's not a one-hitter quitter either. But he just beat Jojo Diaz beat Tevin Farmer, who's a slick fighter. He beat Tevin Farmer, and then he beat also what's the guy's name? Just recently there at lightweight, right? A rough and rugged kind of guy, but I boxed him, I punched him, I worked him. He beat that guy. I forgot what his name is right now. He'll come to me. Javier Fortuna. That's the name. Javier Fortuna. He beat him, right? And Jojo Diaz is a slick fighter, right? And he was super featherweight IBF champion, beating Tevin Farmer to become the super featherweight IBF champion. So, I mean, and what I always try to explain to people, you know why Jojo Diaz could beat Tevin Farmer? Because Tevin Farmer couldn't hit Jojo Diaz like he wanted to, right? You got to have defense, ladies and gentlemen. You got to have defense to be able to beat another guy. You must have offense, obviously, but you have to have defense. So the thing with, if you look at Jojo Diaz has defense, and on top of that, he has good offense. He throw like 3, 4, 5 punch combinations, on the inside or wherever. So with a fighter like that, you're gonna have another defensive fighter who may get by doing his defense. He might be able. Jojo might be able to. He might miss some shots against the defensive fighter, but if you go to the body, he gonna land some shots. And the trick with it is, Tevin Farmer had difficulty hitting Jojo Diaz, and Jojo Diaz also he was able to land shots a little bit more than Tevin Farmer was able to land. And Jojo Diaz had faced Gary Russell Jr. It was a close fight. Okay, he had also faced some other upcoming fighters, and he lost close fights to them, in which you could argue that he won the fights, right? And it just shows you how good he was. Let me give you some other guys. Ryan Garcia obviously is a slick fighter. You also have Carlos Molina. Now people don't talk about Carlos Molina, the IBF super welterweight champion of the world. Carlos Molina is, again, excellent fighter. Okay, excellent fighter. Fought to a draw against Erislandy Lara when I thought he should have beaten Erislandy Lara. And it's not easy to hit Carlos Molina. And Carlos Molina, of course, he throws a lot of offense. He's got a lot of shots and stuff. But he slips shots and get to the inside and hit you with shots. It's not easy to hit him. And it took them sending Carlos Molina back to Mexico and having him there where he didn't have his trainers and he didn't have the conditioning that he usually had, to allow Cornelius Bundridge, aka K9 Bundridge, to beat him. You know what I'm saying? Jose Zepeda, southpaw, slick, right? He still get caught with shots, but he is a slick fighter. And Jose Zepeda is doing very well in the super lightweight division. He's not a world champion there. I think he was a lightweight world champion or something. A secondary lightweight world champion, or was it secondary super lightweight world champion? I can't remember which one. But Jose Zepeda is doing very, very well. And again, the reason why Zepeda would be doing so well is because, once again, he is a slick Mexican fighter. I'm going to give y'all another one. Jesse Magdaleno. Jesse Magdaleno, he was, I believe he was featherweight world champion, WBO, I think it was. Very fast, slick, southpaw, box off the back foot, use the ring, use his angles, and beat opponents, right? And he is of Mexican descent, and he's a Mexican fighter who's slick. And here's another one. I told you about Adam Lopez. Miguel Vasquez. Miguel Vasquez, yeah, he punch and he clinch and stuff, but he's a slick Mexican fighter. He was the IBF lightweight champion for a good period of time before facing Mickey Bay. Okay, and he won the fight actually. But Mickey Bay because Mickey Bay was more active or whatever and trying to win, I think they gave the decision to Mickey Bay. Ray Vargas is currently the WBC Super Bantamweight champion. He's had 5 successful defenses. And Ray Vargas, man, shout out to Boxing Learner. Salute, brother. And Ray Vargas, again, is another slick Mexican boxer. Ray Vargas is not one of them guys who trying to get hit to hit you back. He's not one of those guys. He's slick. All right. And that's a bunch of Mexican fighters there. I just gave you 16 Mexican fighters, right? And then we also got, of course, Oscar De La Hoya, who was slick as well, at 17. So there's a lot of Mexican fighters who, like I said before, that's just off the top of my head. If you guys want to suggest some others, there's a lot of slick Mexican fighters out there. I can think of a couple more right now off the top of my head in boxing right now who are pretty slick, you know. And the point is, of course, Canelo is one of them, right? So Canelo is that would make it 17 right there. You got in the I think it's in the, which division are we looking at now? We got the lightweight division, right? We got the lightweight division where the top guys. You got some tough guys, of which Ryan Garcia is one of them that's slick. In the super lightweight division, I'm trying to remember if there's any Mexican fighter that's slick right there. You can look at even in the welterweight division. Well, we got Virgil Ortiz. Now, Virgil Ortiz is technically sound. He's also slick in the sense that it's not easy to catch him with a punch because he keeps the fight long. He fight from the outside most of the time. He can fight on the inside too. I wouldn't call him slick though. I wouldn't call him slick. He could box a bit though, but I wouldn't call him slick. Jamel Charlo faced, I think Jamel Charlo's last opponent was a slick fighter. Forgot his name. He's a switch hitter as well, and he's from Mexico as well. Let me see who else we got from Mexico who's slick. I wouldn't say Zurdo's slick. I wouldn't say Zurdo's slick. That is Jose Ramirez. I wouldn't say he's a slick fighter, but he's a good fighter, southpaw, you know, fundamentally sound fighter. I wouldn't say that Andy Ruiz is a slick fighter. He's slick to a certain degree, actually. He's slick to a certain degree. He gets to the inside by actually slipping your punches and getting to the inside. So he does have a degree of slickness to it and quickness to him. Thinking though, but he does get bang up in fights. So I wouldn't put Andy Ruiz in that category. You got to look at guys who they don't get bang up, like their face don't get marked up, their body don't be marked up. At the end of the fight, they're not all bruised up and everything. That's a slick fighter because it means you're not hitting them, right? You're not hitting them. Either that or they have tough skin, and I don't think it's that. You know, you look at in boxing today, you know, you got also Juan Francisco Estrada. He's a slick Mexican fighter. He likes to engage a lot, so sometimes he abandons his slickness for engaging, but he's a relatively slick fighter as well. So you got a bunch of them. You got a bunch of them. And you look at it, weight classes and stuff, you want to see that you got some slick fighters in there, Mexican fighters. It's just that I think people believe that, you know, a lot of Mexican fighters, all they do is just go at it, you know, and they're going to go toe to toe, you know, like a Robert Guerrero kind of thing, a Victor Ortiz, Robert Guerrero kind of thing. And to be honest with you, man, there's a lot of young Mexican fighters coming up and so on. Sinicia Estrada, she don't just go toe to toe and get bang out. No, she uses her defense. She roll under shots. She gets a round shot, and she hits you. You know what I'm saying? You look at well, Amanda Serrano's Puerto Rican, but you know, if you really pay attention, a lot of Mexican fighters, one, they do take pride in their defense. They block a lot of shots, and you know, they go to the body a lot. But to say that Mexican fighters are only toe to toe and they're not known for being slick. There's a couple of them that's slick, man. There's a couple of them that's slick. I just mentioned a couple of them, and there's more. There's more actually, but I don't want to talk about all of them right now. And if you guys have any more that you want to mention, you can mention that in the chat section, the comments below, or you can hop on the stream and check me and let's talk a little bit more about it. But Mexican boxing is vast and it's very rich and it has a lot of different kinds of boxers in there. It's not just one kind of boxer. It's not just a Julio Cesar Chavez going in there and getting punched to the head, and taking some cracking shots, you know what I mean, to get to the inside. There's a lot of fighters who had a lot of skill, and if you think of a Henry Armstrong didn't really take hellacious punches either. Bob and weave and get to the inside. He was slick, right? And you find that there's actually a lot of Mexican fighters who would do that same thing. Bob and weave, get to the inside, not just Canelo. Canelo's not the only one. And that's the other thing I want to say, that Canelo, when he was responding and when, what's his name? When Reynoso was responding, he was just saying that Canelo comes from a large heritage of Mexican fighters. I don't think that he was saying that Floyd didn't have an influence on him. I believe he was talking about where Canelo's training came from. And if you look at Canelo's training, even Canelo, before he faced Floyd, was slick. He had a certain degree of slickness to him, right? And you saw him display it against Austin Trout. He showed, his version of slipping punches, his version of fighting off the ropes, which is something like Floyd, but not exactly, right? And his version of walking down a fighter and slipping punches as he's walking you down. So he always had it, and Floyd had identified it when Oscar had presented him to him, and that's how Canelo ended up on Floyd's undercard, because Floyd was looking at Canelo like, this kid got everything. I wish I had this kid. Oscar found a good one, because he had seen Canelo from very, very young, and Canelo, he was a boxer. That's what he do. He box. He circle the ring, box you. If he can get a KO on you, he gets a KO on you. That's always been Canelo. And people always think that Canelo was flat-footed. No. Canelo started walking down fighters and he would sit on his punches, but he was always on his toes, actually, and he'd box you. If he can get you knocked out, he gets you knocked out. But his defense was first. And so Canelo has always been that kind of fighter. Where has Canelo changed and kind of developed and become better? One, his composure. Like, he looked back at the Austin Trout fight on DAZN, and he was like, man, all I needed to do was stay composed. I would have gotten him out of there. I was too excited. Two, so when the younger Canelo faced Floyd, he was a little too excited. He was trying to throw punches and stuff, and he learned from Floyd how to be composed. That he learned from Floyd. He took that from Floyd after facing Floyd. Two, the other thing that Canelo took from Floyd was Canelo used to throw a lot of combinations, right? He would throw a lot of combinations and try and get a fighter out of there. He learned you could throw a lot of combinations and just miss every single one. It's Floyd discipline. So he learned how to compose himself and not throw so many combinations. Start to try to walk down fighters, try to pot shot and walk them down, or pot shot on the back foot and draw them in. And then when you see the opening, you crash them, right? So he learned how to do that. He learned to be more composed, not to waste punches. Right, against certain fighters, he would crash them and get them out of there, like Alfredo Angulo. But in so doing, sometimes he's going 100 miles an hour. You're burning out all that energy when you should pace yourself. If you can slow down the fight a bit and pace yourself, that'll be better. So he learned that, and that's the second thing he learned from Floyd. In terms of key movements and key moves, attacking the body using the sharp jab to the pit and the right hand to the pit. He was doing it before, but he started doing it more often. He started targeting certain areas more often. And as a result of that, and he started really, really perfecting mixing feints. You could see Canelo was working on his feint game, and he's been working on his feint game ever since for a lot. Because when he was younger, he used to use feints, don't get me wrong, but Floyd took that feinting to a whole other level. So Canelo right now, he feints. He uses feints for almost everything he does. He even walks guys down with an illusion, and he started doing it off of Gennady Golovkin. When he had to walk down Golovkin, he realized, okay, I'm gonna use this to walk down Golovkin, because he was a much smaller guy than Golovkin even then. and walking down Golovkin because he was using virtual distance and, you know, the illusion of being closer to a guy than he really is, and all of these kind of things. So Canelo has added to his game since Floyd. He's improved as a fighter since Floyd. Now, some people say, well, it was an experienced green Canelo that faced Floyd when he faced him, and he wasn't in his prime. That's nonsense. He wasn't in his prime. Was he at the level of a Floyd Mayweather? Absolutely not. Couldn't be. How many championship fights had he had? He had only had 7 championship fights. Floyd had had 20-something championship fights at that point in time. Okay. So at the championship fight level, nobody in boxing at the time was experienced as Floyd was at the championship level. Nobody in boxing at the time. Okay. Not Pacquiao, nobody. Okay. And so Canelo coming up against Floyd, of course, Floyd said experience is the major key. Floyd had a lot more experience at the championship level than Canelo did. All right. But the caveat was what everybody was banking on was, yeah, he had a hell of a lot of experience, but it don't mean crap if the younger fighter could impose his athleticism and skill on you. And he was bigger than Floyd. So everybody was thinking Canelo gonna beat Floyd. Everybody was thinking that because they calculated that Floyd would not be, he would have broken down a bit. And therefore, if Canelo beat up Floyd, if he beat on his body and stuff, then Floyd would feel his age and he would be able to get him out of there. Beknownst to everybody else, Floyd is just so much more advanced than the average fighter anywhere, or the great fighters of past greats, that Floyd literally knew how to use certain feints and certain movements to encroach on Canelo's space and show him, I'm the big dog here. And if you don't watch yourself, and if you don't watch your step, I'm going to get you out of here. Okay. And so the very first round, where was Floyd? He was halfway across the ring already, ready to go into Canelo's space. As the bell rang, Floyd sped across the ring, just like how Tyson Fury did against Deontay Wilder, and imposed himself directly on Canelo. He was letting Canelo know from the get-go, I'm the big dog here, not you. Okay? He stepped right to Canelo, right up on him. He was right up on him, and he was attacking Canelo in the very first round. Immediately, like a blaze, he started blazing him up. And he wanted to see what Canelo had, in his game, in his arsenal. And so that's the same thing Tyson Fury did to Deontay Wilder. He didn't even give Deontay Wilder a thought. And Deontay Wilder, you see, let me tell you something about mental games in boxing. All right. And this is why you never underestimate your opponent. If you go into a fight thinking, I'm the bigger guy, I'm the younger guy, I'm going to beat his ass. You go in there and next thing, he's right up on you because he's quick. He's right up on you and he's throwing punches at you. And you have to be backing off. You never planned for a fight like that. You never thought of that scenario happening. You thought he was going to run around the ring and you was going to pursue him and beat him up. And now he's going toe to toe with you. You don't expect that. That is experience. You don't go into the ring with preconceived ideas. Like a lot of guys go into the ring. Floyd, if you listen to Floyd talk, you say it's going to be what it's going to be. It's going to be what it's going to be. And we'll see what he has to bring. He don't come in with no preconceived ideas. He's going into the ring and focusing in on you, and he's going to deal with you, and he's going to see what you bring to the table, right? That's how Floyd fight. So when I listen to guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, I always repeat it over and over. So this is something that must be. I hear Sugar Ray Leonard say Floyd too small. I laugh because you falling for the trap again, Leonard. Hearns is falling for the trap that Floyd too small. The minute you say he's too small is the minute he has a one-up on you, because you don't expect him to be up in your grill. You don't expect him to be right up in your face throwing punches at you. You never expect that because he's too small. I can handle it. That's the same mistake that Leonard made with Durant, right? He a small guy. He coming up from lightweight. He a small guy. I'm going to handle him. Oh, I'm going to make him pay for all the nonsense he been talking. And he fall right into Durant's trap, right? And Floyd would make Leonard and Hearns fall into the same trap. It's a mental game. It ain't no physical game. Boxing's 90% mental. If it was up to physicality, Canelo whooped Floyd ass. He beat him to a pulp. He beat him all around the ring because Floyd is not as strong as Canelo. He's not. He's strong, but he's not as strong as Canelo. Canelo hit Floyd one punch in his thigh. One punch in his thigh, and it swelled up Floyd's thigh. If Canelo could have landed like he wanted to on Floyd, Floyd would be knocked the hell out. But Floyd's got something called defense. Defense. Canelo was that much bigger than Floyd. You look at the two of them in the ring, Floyd looked like a little boy and Canelo looked like a big Hulk, right? Do you remember the fight? But because Floyd was able to not only use his defense, but offense as well, go toe-to-toe with Canelo, but yet not be in front of him. You know, that's how he beat him. And because I'm telling you, man, not many people would be able to beat Canelo. That Canelo that came that night, as much as it was a catch weight of 152, not a lot of guys would have been able to beat him. Okay? Because Canelo would be going after the guys, and the fight would have gone just like how we would have expected it. Floyd being a smaller guy, you expect him to move around the ring, be careful. And if you make any mistakes, Canelo can knock him out, right? That's how that fight was supposed to go. It didn't go anything like that. All you got to do is watch Sugar Ray Leonard versus Donnie Lalonde, and watch how Sugar Ray Leonard fought Donnie Lalonde, and you will understand why this is the same kind of fight, basically. The difference is the approach Floyd had to Donnie Lalonde. Sugar Ray Leonard had a lot more experience than Donnie Lalonde at the championship level. Donnie Lalonde just became world champion. Yes, he was at a catch weight, 168, you know, but at the end of the day, Donnie Lalonde had his power for about 8 rounds, right, of the 9. The point is, Leonard struggled with Donnie Lalonde. He struggled with him. Floyd did not struggle with Canelo, right? He did not struggle with Canelo. He whitewashed him. And the difference between a Floyd and, I'm mentioning Floyd again. We're going into the Floyd parade, but I mentioned Floyd and them guys like Leonard and Hearns and all those other guys from the 80s is Floyd is just mentally, he's just that much better than them all. All right, you talking about Leonard's at this level, you know, Hearns is at this level, you know what I mean? Duran is at this level, and Floyd somewhere up out of the screen. You know, it's just different. It's just different, right? But Canelo, okay, so if Floyd's way up here, Canelo's somewhere up here, right? Floyd's way out of the screen. Canelo's somewhere here. Canelo's a very, very smart fighter, and he's only getting smarter. He's only growing as he continues onwards and onwards. So I'm expecting him to make adjustments to Caleb Plant, and let's see if Caleb Plant can make adjustments to Canelo. But Canelo's a very, 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 very smart fighter, and he's still learning and he's still growing as a fighter. So, we'll see what happens. And if Canelo, here's the thing, there's a lot Canelo going to have to deal with, because the Caleb Plant, like I said, he's kind of like an Andre Ward, like a young Andre Ward versus old seasoned Floyd Mayweather. It's kind of like that, except they're both young, right? So Canelo's like the Floyd, and Caleb Plant's like Andre Ward. And a lot of people are like, Caleb Plant, man, he's gonna get knocked out by Canelo. No, it's not happening. I guarantee you that. This is a fight where Canelo's going to have to go all 12 rounds with Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant's going to give him some problems. And again, the key to boxing is to hit but not get hit. And Canelo's also tricky with that, you know, with his virtual distancing and everything. He don't get hit that much either. But if Caleb Plant can get to hit, can, you know, do what Billy Joe Saunders did in rounds 5 and 6, where he's hitting Canelo and not getting hit at the same time, ooh, it's going to be an interesting fight, man. It's going to be an interesting fight. But anyway, this is all I had to say about BlueBlood Sports TV. Shout out to BlueBlood, by the way. But there's a lot of things. You see, what I want to say to people is, you know, a lot of people say, well, Floyd, you know, you see Canelo doing the pull counters and the lead rights and all this. Listen, them things you can't learn overnight. You can't learn to do a pull counter overnight. You can't learn to do the lead right overnight. That's something that Canelo had since he was younger. Okay, and if you look at it, some of his earlier fights, like his fight against Hatton, right? You'll see him pull countering him. He pull counters like Duran. He pull counters from the outside, so you'll slip the jab this way, okay, and then he comes over the top, right? He can also pull counter on the inside, but he don't do that too much. But Canelo is a fighter who has always had those skill sets, and he's just sharpening them now and refining them. Right? It's not necessary that he learned those things from Floyd, but he's a fighter kind of like Floyd. So this why I say Canelo's like a bigger Floyd is because a Mexican version of him is because Canelo always had those skill sets. And when you saw Canelo face Floyd, the problem with it was like Floyd versus Floyd version 2, and they were just facing each other. And why Floyd was able to beat Canelo so easily wasn't because necessarily Canelo is a bad fighter, or it was that Canelo does some of the same things Floyd do. So, and Floyd just happened to do them better because he got more experience. So Canelo wasn't able to overcome that. Even now, if Canelo was to face Floyd, not the old Floyd, not 44-year-old Floyd, let's just scroll him back to about 38-year-old Floyd. It'll be a tougher fight, no doubt about it. It would be a closer fight. But that 38-year-old Floyd or 36-year-old Floyd would still probably beat him, mainly because Floyd has other tricks in the bag he would just go to, that he doesn't really use that often, right? So, it's kind of hard because it's hard to hit the target. If you can't hit the target, you can't win the fight. And Floyd's a very hard target to hit. We all know this, right? Canelo's a hard target to hit too. Don't get it twisted. All right. That's why Caleb Plant has his hands full. Canelo got that defense. All right. But the trick to it is that Caleb Plant also got that defense. So it's going to be an interesting fight. You know what's funny though? I listen to fans sometimes and they say, oh, with Canelo versus Caleb Plant, that's going to be Canelo's going to knock him out and blah, 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 blah. They don't realize. They talk about Floyd versus Erislandy Lara. That would be a boring fight, man. That would be a boring fight. You don't realize that Canelo versus Caleb Plant is the same kind of fight. They don't realize that. They don't realize that it's two defensive fighters, very, exceptional defensive fighters who will be facing each other, and there'll be a lot of chess being played, and there's going to be a lot of missing going on. They don't realize that. So they think this is a fight in which Canelo's going to go in there and knock out Caleb Plant. That's not happening. Caleb Plant's not knocking out Canelo, and Canelo's not knocking out Caleb Plant. I'm letting y'all know now. That's not the fight you're going to see. It's going to be a tactical fight, okay? So for those people who think it's going to be a barn burner and Canelo's going to run over Caleb Plant, Caleb Plant's weak, he can't handle Canelo, y'all tripping. Big time, okay? That's a fight in which the fighter who is first and commits themselves to being first is going to win. Most likely he's going to take control of the fight until the other fighter figures out an adjustment and gets to be first. So I think that's how it's going to be. It's a very tactical fight. It's a 50-50 fight down the center, in my opinion. Most people favor Canelo because of his experience, whereas Caleb Plant doesn't really have that experience. But by talking with Andre Ward and talking with other seasoned fighters, hopefully he gets to talk with Floyd Mayweather himself. You get that seasoning. I know fighters talk with each other all the time, okay? And I hear trainers, they collaborate to face other fighters and stuff like that. I know game plans and stuff. I know it's a fraternity. I understand. But at the end of the day, the trick to the whole thing in boxing, because it's all about this. Boxing, if you have to have a physical body, and the physical body must be able to execute whatever the game plan is. But other than that, it's really a lot of tactical stuff. It's a lot of mental stuff. And yes, it's not something where you're thinking through it. Like how I'm waving my hands. I'm not thinking to wave my hands. I just wave my hands, right? So if, like, for instance, if the shot is coming, you have to block it. You don't think to block that. You just do it, right? You're more focused on your opponent and where the openings are and making sure that you're in the right position, right? That's what you're basically doing, but you're all focused in. You're not thinking about it, because the moment you have to think about something, it slows down everything, right? When you're fighting. So not really thinking about it, you kind of get in a zone, you know what you trained for, and you just kind of react, sort of like, but it's not really reacting, because it's like you're setting up things, and it's like how I'm talking right now. There's thoughts going through my head, but I'm not thinking to think how to talk, right? I've already learned how to talk, so it's just do it, right? It's the same thing with boxing. Boxing, you're not thinking how to throw a right hand, or thinking how to throw this punch, or thinking that I need to throw this punch in reaction to that punch. No, you're just reacting to it. And whatever come out, come out. You know what I mean? but it's still chess in that you're setting up, you're conscious of what you're doing and setting up for later on in the fight. You understand? It's not just I'm going to the body. No, no. I see the opening for the solar plexus. He's coming in, boom, to the solar plexus, right? That's kind of more like it. It's not much of a thought. It's not even a sentence. It's just solar plexus. Sort of like, the brain and the way our thoughts go, it's like boom, bam, boom, right? I mean, I can articulate a sentence to tell you, well, I was attacking the solar plexus. I was going to his body so that I could pay off dividends. I was going to specific areas on his body so I could pay off dividends. Like if he's jabbing too much, I'm gonna go to his spleen. I'm gonna go underneath his arm. I'm gonna hook underneath his arm. I'm gonna attack his arm. I'm gonna counter his arm. To tire out the jabbing arm, to counter the jabbing arm, so he knows every time he throw a jab, I'm gonna punish him for that and discipline him and that kind of stuff, right? You can articulate it, but that's not what you're doing in the fight, right? In the fight, it's like spleen, counter. Your mind doesn't even think that. You may hear it deep in the background, counter, spleen, right? So you're not really like how I'm talking here. It's nothing like that, right? So anyways, the whole point behind it is that, when you can automatically do these things, sort of like you're kind of on autopilot, it's just like where you articulate with your hands or you talk with your mouth, you're automatically just doing the thing, right? But the trend of thought, the thought is carrying you, but it's not like it's in words and sentences and stuff like that. It's not like that in any way, shape, or form. It's kind of like that. All right, man. So thanks for coming through, big brother and boxing learner. I'm out of here. What you need out of the building for the moment. We'll talk some more boxing later on in the day. If you guys want to join in again, we will talk about great welterweight champions. I'm trying to do that later on today. But until then, what you need is out. Peace to you guys.